Hey there everybody, this is Robin with Creative2xmom, and in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you the books we read in the month of May. So welcome back to my channel. My name is Robin and this is Creative2xmom. This channel is all about homeschooling, parenthood, and thriving in the day-to-day. And today's video is going to be all about the books that I read in the month of May, as well as a read aloud that we did with our kiddos. Now, I am a big reader, and May was a really heavy reading month for me. Part of it was because I was doing a little bit of pre-reading before I passed things off to my kids, and part of it was because I don't know, I just hit that end of the year slump and I was doing something for myself, which was a lot of reading. So I started out the month with The Brave Learner by Julie Bogart. I mentioned before in my spring reads that this was a book that I have been really challenged to get through in the past. Her style of homeschooling is very gentle, and I feel like I could learn a lot from her, but it's so contrary to the way that I teach. She has a very Charlotte Mason style, which I aspire to incorporate more Charlotte Mason into our homeschool, but I just really struggle with making that align with my type A personality. So I was determined to get through this one this time. Now, I have to say, I did feel like I got a lot out of it. I did feel like there was some things in here that I really need to incorporate into our homeschool, and that is a lot of that gentleness, a lot of the letting the kids take the lead. And then particularly there was one chapter near the end where she talked about just the function of parenting within homeschooling, and that chapter in particular was probably the most impactful of the entire book. Now, I'm really glad I got through the book, but I will say I still struggle with it. I still think, oh, this book is not for me. And then on the other hand, I think this probably is exactly the book for me because it forces me to think of homeschooling in a very different manner than what comes naturally. And I think there's a balance there that I need. However, I will say, if you are a type A personality like me, this is not a how-to as much as it is how to look at your kids, how to view your home, how to view your parenting journey. So I'm on the fence if I would recommend this one or not. It really depends upon the person and where they're at and how they desire to teach their kids. It messes with me. I know she has a new book coming out called Raising Critical Thinkers, and on the one hand I really want to read it, and on the other hand I'm not sure that it's going to be super impactful for me just because of her particular homeschooling style. I'm on the fence about this one. If you've read it, share with me in the comments below what you think. After that, I definitely needed some reading that was more aligned with just giving my brain a break, and that was I Lived on Butterfly Hill. I'm not even sure I could say the author's name. It's Marjorie Augustine. This was a book that I came across from the Falco family. Serena was reading this with her kids. And this is about a young girl who is living, I think it's Argentina. She's living in Argentina, Chile, at the time where it's almost like a civil war going on. There's been a coup, the president has been assassinated, and her parents are going into hiding because of their political beliefs, some of the things that they've spoke out against. And she ends up being sent to America to live with a family member. And she's caught in this realm of being in exile from her country, being sort of in love with two countries, living in Chile. That's where her home is, that's where her family is. She's struggling with where are her parents, and yet she also comes to love being in America. Eventually she's sent back to Chile, and she goes on a journey of reuniting her family because her parents are still in hiding. This was really good. It took a look at history. I would call this historical fiction. It took a look at history in a softer manner. I felt very comfortable passing this off to my 5th grader. I felt like it wasn't going to be too much, but it was a good introduction into sort of some history that he wouldn't understand or be exposed to otherwise. very good cultural read if you're trying to expose your kids to other cultures. I don't remember there being anything that caused me to have a red flag in this book. Very, very good, and in fact it kept me engaged as well. And I took a complete 180 turn from there, and I went into 1 Second After by William R. Fortune. This book messed with me. I wasn't sure I was going to even start it, and then I wasn't sure I was going to finish it. This is the story of a small town and the aftermath of an EMP attack. The United States has been attacked, the communication system is completely wiped out, and this small town is doing what it has to do to survive. So so gripping, so real, so engaging, and yet so absolutely terrifying, because it goes into detail of what society would look like if you sent us back 100, 150 years without communication, without electricity. How are you going to get water? How are you going to deal with garbage, plumbing, all of that? So many things that I had not thought of. And it takes you follow one particular family, and then within the context of their community and what they have to do. Very, very good. I do a lot of my reading before bed, and this was a hard one to read before bed because it gets your mind going, and actually is a little bit terrifying, I have to say. I finished it, and I have the second one, haven't started it yet. I've been trying to do a little bit of light reading in between the two of them because it's just very intense. But if you're into that sort of post-apocalyptic reading, which is not usually my genre, but I loved this one. Very, very good. The next book I read in the month of May was The Life-Giving Parent. Now again, this is one of those books that I have started in the past, and it's very different from the way I think. I think that there is a lot to be gleaned from the Clarkson writing. I have read some of Sally's books before, and I've shared with you Awaking Wonder. I have shared with you Help, I'm Drowning. I listened to her podcast, but again, it's very different from how I typically think. Now, I had this one on my Kindle, so what I did, because I knew I was just going to gloss over it, I knew it was going to be one of those that was going to be hard to incorporate in my life because it is so different. I took lots and lots of tag notes in it, and it's linked to my Goodreads account. I did that intentionally so that I could go back and look at it. I think that he has a lot of good things to say. A lot of their writing focuses on calling out the good in your kids, which I, in theory, am all for, but it is so hard to switch the mindset of disciplining to that proactive calling out. So I took a lot of notes in it. Now, that's not to say that I loved everything he had to say, and I think if you look at my Goodreads account and you say, oh my gosh, there's, over 100 highlights in this book. She must have loved this book. In some respects, yes, I loved this book. In other respects, I highlighted things that I felt were going to help me remember the book. Now, good or bad, or love or hate or whatever. It's very gentle. Again, a lot of Charlotte Mason philosophy, and I aspire to be that, and it's funny that I aspire to be that because it's just not me. So I don't know. Again, I'm on the fence. I love Sally's writing. Her thoughts and concepts do the same thing with my brain, but not as bad. This one was really, really tough for me to wrap my mind around. So I'm curious to see what other people think. Again, if you've read this one, I would love to know your comments down below. What am I missing? Why is this such a challenge for me? This was a challenging book for sure. Alright, so because I read 1 Second After, I've shared with you guys before, I always try to have a fiction and a non-fiction going at the same time. So I was doing Life-Giving Parent and 1 Second After at the same time. 1 Second After was so heavy that when I switched gears to my fiction read, I went back to the Borrowers series, and I actually read 2 this month. I have been reading through them. There's 5 in the series. I shared a few months ago that we read the first one as part of our homeschool. We did a unit study on it, and then I just was loving this series, and it's not something that I've ever read before. So for the month of May, I actually got through Borrowers Afloat, which is the next one. The borrowers they have become dependent upon this little boy and his grandfather. That's the home that they've moved into now, and they find out that the home is going to be shut up because the grandfather needs to go into like assisted living almost. He's going to have surgery, and so they know they have to leave because they're not going to have anybody to live off of. They're not going to have food in the home, this whole thing. So they are escaping the house and finding a new home. And then after that one, we have the borrowers aloft, where they have been discovered and kidnapped. This was a lot of fun just because it was such a twist. Up to this point, almost every human being, or human being as they call them, has been helpful and kind, and now they've been kidnapped and wanting to almost be used for profit. And this is about their escape again. Cute series. I am currently reading number 5. So if you have a kid that's probably in the 4th through 6th grade, I would recommend this just as a fun. There's nothing really big red flags in it at all. Definitely a good kids series. And the last thing that we read in the month of May was our family read aloud, and this is The Bronze Bow. This has been on my reading list for quite some time. It's a good historical fiction to go. We added it with our Story of the World Ancient History, and we were about in the time of Christ when we picked this book up. This little boy is doing what he can to survive. He believes that when Israel is going to be restored, that it's going to be through force, and he meets Christ, and he has his way of thinking challenged. Very, very good. I wasn't sure I was going to like it at first. The challenge with this book is that you have names and places that are unfamiliar that can be a little bit hard to follow. It was an okay read aloud, and I think if you have younger kids, I would definitely read aloud, but if you have older kids, or even for yourself personally, I think I would rather personally read this because of just following characters and following the storyline. That's just a personal preference. I like to see when it's names or places that I'm unfamiliar with. It's a little bit easier to track when I can see them. But either way, very good book. So that's all the books that we read in the month of May. Leave me a comment down below letting me know if you've read any of these and what you think of them, or what you're adding to your reading list. I'm always looking for new ideas. Also, as a heads up, in the next couple weeks I'm going to be sharing my summer reading list, so keep your eyes out for that one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. Bye guys.